some key reasons why this is such an important topic. There's a lot of reasons, but there's three in particular. If you look at the 60% of reasons which you're in hospital outside of your genetic inheritance, if you look at the social determinants of health, employment is such a major factor in this. And you look at the latest indices of multiple deprivation, which is done every half decade, the alignment between employment deprivation and overall deprivation is so close that it's effectively a predictor. So if we can solve the economic inactivity challenge, so many other things become a bit easier. So there's a real health advantage in considering this. The reality is that it hasn't happened randomly, but a lot of the coast is facing the same challenges at the same time. They were prosperous, thriving centres for many years, but they've got this sort of single dominant sector aspect about them, which creates narrow pathways for a lot of people. So people either move or they discount themselves very, very early on because they can't see them as part of that. And then the third factor is that we've got this half compass effect, which shrinks ambition, shrinks the labour market. And it's a challenge not just for the job seekers, but for the employers themselves. There's a distance. It's not just a distance from each other. And the last couple of miles on the rail track to the coast Ols were slowest. And you can see that in terms of the deployment apprenticeships, the in-person apprenticeships are very, very seldom located within commutable distance from a coastal community. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a lot of good things which we're going to be exploring today about how we can tackle these challenges. So in terms of our case studies, we're going to start off to the south with the Hampshire via Wight, and I'm very grateful to be joined by Nicola today. Nicola, would you be able to introduce yourself and then provide us our first case study, please?
Yeah, no problem. That's great. Thanks, Nick. So hello, everyone. I'm Nicola Longson. I'm the Deputy Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare. However, I'm with you today because I'm the SRO for the Careers for Young People programme across the Trust. My previous role involved me being a director in operations in community health services on the island in particular. And due to the pressures that we experienced in terms of our ability to recruit for all those reasons of only having, half of much space to recruit from as every other areas and things like that, and we're leaving us in a position where we had massive variation essentially in our ability to recruit. So I guess in terms of starting the overall case study, our ambition of putting in place Careers for Young People programme was to provide careers in the NHS for our local young people. I moved to the island 10 years ago from the mainland, and I have 3 teenage daughters. Now they're teenagers, and what I started to realise really quickly is that in the NHS we weren't really offering any vacancies or jobs to anyone under the age of 18. Most often the youngest was about 20, 21. We had a massive issue with retention across the summer periods. I'm sure many of you will deal with that. Our staff can often earn more by going and working in the tourism sector on the island. We end up with a retention rate that's either people that stay forever or people that come and leave quite quickly. And what we wanted to do is really provide a recruitment opportunity to address growing our own workforce, to address some of those ongoing challenges around retention and things that we've always had. So in terms of what we put in place something called Careers for Young People programme. We started it back in 2022, so we're in year 4 now, about to appoint to cohort 5. What happens is we visit and present in schools and education settings. We appoint people predominantly between the age of 16 and 18. We get them to apply, and we work really closely with our apprenticeship provider. We do values-based selection days. So we're not appointing them based on a job application, a formal job application and their experience and skills. These are school leavers. So we're looking at their values. Do they meet our care values? Are they compassionate? Are they accountable? Are they respectful? And are they driven to do the best they can do in terms of excellence? Once they come into post, we induct them and then we put them on a traineeship, which rotates them for the first 6 months around lots of services. That's because often in our experience of going into schools, people think you can either be a doctor, nurse or a physio or an ambulance driver. That's the most things we get back. And what we help them understand is that there's over 300 careers in the NHS and 157 on the island alone. So we really try and rotate them around those services and do a bit of a try before you buy to give them the exposure. We celebrate with them, we give them the care certificate, they do their English and maths if they need to, and then they get moved on to an 18-month apprenticeship in a particular workplace area. They do a level 3 qualification in the main in that area. We give them career coaching. They're only appointed on a 2-year fixed term contract, essentially 6-month traineeship and an 18-month apprenticeship. And then when they graduate, we've given them support with career coaching, interview prep. We help them fill in an application form, which is apparently what's the hardest to do for them. And that's the feedback they give us. And we support them in getting roles in the trust. And we've been really successful in getting people roles in the trust. So what I wanted to do was try and think through the key things. Next slide, please, Nick, to share with you in terms of to our success. We've sent you the back reading. I'm happy to take any questions when we get to the question bit about any of that. But essentially, in terms of the key ingredients for success, buy-in from operational teams to support the placements is what's made it such a success, I think. A lot of these programs are run from within corporate HR departments, and the operational staff don't own the programs. We've run it completely the other way around on the island, just because we needed to. From an operational director perspective, I had issues with recruitment, really needed to address those issues. I had so many vacancies, and along with other things, we managed to, and this programme, we managed to reduce our vacancy factor from 16% down to about 7%, which was pretty normal and static for us, particularly in those entry-level roles. So you need operational support for the placements. These people need a lot of support. These young people, we often find that we're teaching them how to work, not just teaching them work. And particularly in the first 6 months, that's really important that the operational teams know that they need to support that and wrap around them. There needs to be a level of acceptance from the organisation of the enhanced risk of employing under 18s. It is more risky, and it's not risky in a sense of risky on a day-to-day basis for the young people or the staff predominantly, but as an organisation, they are still children, and therefore we need to put enhanced risk assessments in place, particularly sometimes specific based on the individual situation, but also for each area they're going into to make sure that the place we're putting into them is a place of safety for them as a young person. We invest a lot of time in putting the right pastoral care in support. So I said a moment ago, we're teaching them how to work, not what to do at work. Many of them really struggle with the fact that they have to come in every morning at 8:30. Yes, you do, actually, that's work. And the fact that they have to go to where we need them to go. So it's not that they're in one place as they're rotating round. They do 2 weeks in a certain place, and then 2 weeks later they have to go and present somewhere else and meet new people. What, I've got to start again meeting new people? Yes, you have. So we provide a lot of pastoral care. We've learned a lot about how young people work and communicate, and how they don't like to pick up a phone. Who could imagine that a young person won't answer a phone? They'll text you back, but they won't answer if you ring. And we learned things that we probably didn't even anticipate were going to be a challenge. The next point is around, for success, having a dedicated programme team for delivery. One of the things we've really experienced is that you can't do this on the side of your desk. I probably do it on the side of my desk, but I don't do the delivery of it. But the team that do the delivery of it, we have roughly a band 5 to provide pastoral care and support the planning for every 12 to 15 young people. The input that they have to put in up front to provide pastoral care and do the planning while they're doing such quick rotations is much greater than they do once they go onto their 18-month apprenticeship in a single service. But what that's soon replaced by is the next cohort that comes in that they're doing year 1 for. So they kind of have a quieter 4 months where they plan for the next cohort coming in. But it's a dedicated team. At the moment we're rolling out. So at the moment I've got a band 6 who's a programme lead. I've got a band 5 who provides the pastoral care and then some admin support from a band 3. And a second band 5 in the second area where we're going live. So if that helps you think about the support you need to put in place. The last item on this slide is around education partner to support the delivery. We couldn't do this alone. This isn't like a kind of standalone apprenticeship. This is done with our education partner. The young people spend 3 days with us out in services each week, and they spend Mondays and Fridays, I think it is, on most of the cohorts with our education provider. They also provide pastoral care and support with things like basic communication skills, improving their confidence. They help them through the care certificate with input from our staff. So that education partner does a lot more than they normally would in a standard apprenticeship that they provide for people. One of the things we did do following cohort 1, we learn as we go, and we've been improving the programme. Following cohort 1, they used to come into clinical service 4 days a week. Now we've put them back to 3 days a week, because the feedback from the young people was, we've not got enough of a network, we don't know each other enough to depend on each other for support. So we've moved to 3 day a week in services, and Mondays and Fridays with them working together in a classroom. And what we've found is that's creating a great network of young people that are supporting each other through the 2-year programme. Next slide, Nick, please. Grow it slowly. We started with 10 trainees. That's all we did in cohort 1. Cohort 2 followed. So at that point we had 20 on the run at the same time, 10 year 1s, 10 year 2s on the island. Now we run with a regular 11 a year. We run them across clinical services and non-clinical business support services. And the grow it slowly is because not only are you developing the people and you need the team, you've got to upskill your services to support young people and make it not feel like a burden in their service that they've got yet another student or yet another young person with them, especially with the 2-week rotations. And create networks of support. I've talked a little bit about that. That's creating those Monday, Friday sessions where the young people sit with the education partner and created networks together. And we've seen that work beautifully when one of our young people on a Christmas do actually with their colleagues went off sick, and they all 8 of them took her to hospital and stayed with her in hospital. So we really are creating that psychologically safe space where they support each other. We listen to the learners and the staff. They didn't like the uniforms when they went into services. We put them in a uniform while they're on pre-apprenticeship, a polo shirt that says the same for all of them. We need to be able to spot them to keep them safe. Once they go into services on their apprenticeship, we've moved away from that, moved them into uniform. They prefer that. And we also, things like staff-wise, we've developed booklets so that if they've been out with a therapy team, when they come back to the office, they don't want to sit and watch someone type the notes into System 1. So we've created workbooks that those young people can work through whilst they're sat to help with the development as well. So it's not quite as onerous on staff. Really important to develop good relationships with school. That's where we mostly get our pusher people from. We're getting at least 50 screened applicants a year that are suitable for the programme, and we take 11. So you can see how competitive the programme's become on the island. And the schools really welcome that. And then lastly, from my programme manager, please, Nicola, can you mention the amount of time to onboard? You'd be surprised how many people at 16 don't have a passport or a driving licence. Do you try DBS checking them when they've got neither of the above? It's quite challenging. So make sure you put time in to do that kind of stuff. Challenges in maintaining and rolling out was the other thing I wanted to pick up with you. So one of the challenges, we are rolling out. We run it out on the island for 4 cohorts. This year we've now appointed a cohort into Portsmouth, and also we've put a non-clinical cohort into our estates and facilities team of our organisation. What's been really interesting is that whilst you're going, you've got to continue to maintain the buy-in and the challenge from staff and services. That's really difficult. You know the amount of pressure that your teams are under in your services, and we're asking them to do yet another thing. Once they start working with these young people, they really recognise that they can contribute and add to their provision, but it's quite a slog at first. So you've got to work hard to maintain that, especially through the early rotation period while we're kind of try before we buy, because they don't see the benefits. They're only seeing them for such short periods of time. The next one is around rolling out wider and the cost of providing the central coordination. So every time we roll out, we have to put a kind of cost pressure in, because the points I said earlier, this recipe for success is you need the coordination. So we're not just putting the apprentices in, we're having to put the pastoral care and the support in to coordinate. So there is a cost pressure of that. And there's a cost pressure that's directly related to the success of the programme. So you kind of can't do it without it, but therefore getting that funded when we could just be appointing into vacancies is an option. Leading on to finding funding to create posts in a cash-strapped NHS. I tried to write that a bit more positively, but I think I failed. But it's a reality, isn't it? So I've mainstreamed this programme because I was in ops at the time. I understood where I'd got substantive vacancies I could never appoint back into, and I've taken those vacancies and made those into a pot of money. That means I fund a rolling programme of 22 young people on apprenticeship all the time, so kind of a non-recurrent but substantive budget that I'm spending against. Takes a little bit of time for finance to kind of get with you and understand how you're trying to do it. It's a different model. So that was okay for me at the time. What's been really hard now is as the cash has got more difficult in some of the areas, how do you release vacancies where they're really struggling for staff, but you need something to fund the programme? So that's a continuing challenge. We've been funded this year by the widening access demonstrator sites to do the rollout in Portsmouth, and we're just hoping that we can make such a success of it that the services then are willing to support it on an ongoing basis. Finding a suitable contracting model to roll out further. We were really lucky on the island at the time. There was probably really only one apprenticeship provider who we could work with, which made it really easy. The procurement process is different because you're not actually buying anything as such from that apprenticeship provider. You're working with them and they have to provide such a lot to enable the programme. So as we start to roll out, we're thinking about how are we going to do that, particularly in areas where there's multiple apprenticeship providers and we don't want to favour anyone. We want to be able to support that model across the patch. Can't remember if I did any more. That was it. Oh no, a few more. Rules and regulations. Yeah, this is linked to the getting your organisation to agree. The safeguarding is substantially different for these young people. We have to put much more stringent risk assessments in place. Every new area we go to, we then have to work with those safeguarding teams to increase their knowledge and understanding of how the programme runs. So that continues to be an issue. The amount of partners and schools we have to connect with, that's a big commitment, and we've managed that commitment through the coordinator, the Band 5. And then the consideration we're thinking about is whether we stick to 16 to 18 or go wider. On the mainland, we've gone wider with the widening access demonstrator site. We've gone through to 25. Some of the challenges around that is how do you get the pre-apprenticeship element of it funded, because the way the education providers can access funding differs based on the age range, which has meant I've got a fantastic education provider that works really interactively with me to make it work based on who we find, but it is really important and difficult to try and land that right and link it with the right education funding. In terms of progress and success, we're really proud. We've won a number of awards, and most recently we won the King's Award for Enterprise for the impact on the social foundations of the island, essentially, from King Charles. So that's lovely to have with the trophy on the side and the beautiful signed letter from him. And in terms of rollout, we are doing well now in terms of engaging wider. I've talked about already on the mainland. We've also recently rolled out what used to be an internal programme to the trust now to primary care as well. So primary care are now taking our trainees, and we're rotating across mental health services, community health services and primary care organisations to help them recruit into entry-level posts. And we're doing some great work with the MP on the Isle of Wight. The MP is really keen to support young people into roles and asked us to share with our local businesses on the island, where we do have those key industries. Could they do a similar model to the model that we're doing across health and care around careers for young people? So we're trying to apply what we've learned in the healthcare setting into the private sector with the support of the local MP. I'm hoping that gives you enough on how we've engaged, where we've engaged, who we've engaged with. Happy to take any questions, and I hope I've not gone over time.
No, in fact, I went over time for you, Nicola, so you're all good. Well, if this wasn't on Teams, we'll get big rounds of applause, but thank you very much, Nicola. That was a really great start to today's session. So I'm going to look out for yellow hands, but just a couple of things which sort of really struck me about this is that the rotational aspect is something which has been discussed and described in a lot of our coastal projects about these taster courses and not narrowing something down to just one experience and just giving a full gamut. That's really interesting. I think these networks of young people, I'd be really interested to find from any of the people on the call today whether they're doing that similar approaches through their pilot programs, because again, it's something which we haven't had to do in the past, and it feels a bit innovative now, but it might be the new sort of business as usual way of doing things, bearing in mind what Gen Z are sort of showing us at the moment in terms of where they are into the market, and basically teaching them not about the job, but teaching them sort of about what work is like to begin with. These are really, really, it's not rocket science, but we're not doing it de facto at the moment, which is quite important. And we've got things like skills boot camps and other things with different names, but this seems like a really, really clever way. So that's really, really interesting. I will pick on people if the hands come out, just to let you know. And we're going to start with Swale because you're another island community, just to get your impressions about it. But I've got one question for you, Nicola. What we've encountered during the widening access programme is the big block around NHS freezers during the time. How have you navigated that over the last 6 months?
So in the previously, from an island perspective, where we're about to go into cohort 5, it's a substantive budget that's established with a constant flow of people being allocated to that cost. So it doesn't deem a vacancy. So a lot of the challenge here has been around the vacancies. So they're not vacant posts, they've always got someone in them. It's just a rolling group of people that are in those posts. So that's one way we're dealing with it, where we've already got provision. In terms of the rollout, that has been a challenge. I think some of the messages that we've been landing is, as a local coastal community, we have to grow our own. I mean, we're fully surrounded by water on the Isle of Wight, as others are. You don't even have the half that spans to kind of grab from other people. It's probably one of the most expensive spans of water to cross, they say, in Europe. So bringing people over from the mainland is, again, essentially really tough. We've worked hard to grow our own, and in growing our own, what we've tried to really do is recognise that we're growing our own at every level, and therefore we have to bring in at entry level. So we need to do even more at entry level because we are growing our own workforce through the ranks to bring people on. So this has enabled us to have an ongoing pipeline. The other thing that's really helped with the conversation is when I talk about the attrition rate. So of all of the success rate of getting people into jobs is, I think everyone who's gone through the programme has ended up, if they've wanted a job, with a job. 80% have actually gone into our trust and got jobs in our trust of cohort 1. It's more now, I've got the number at hand. And of those that have gone into jobs in our trust, they're still in those jobs. And we're on cohort 5 this year, so that's 3 years on. The people who got jobs from cohort 1 are still in their jobs because we've brought them in and we've grown them through the NHS, rather than bringing them in when they've already had experience of being in highly paid summer cafe jobs or whatever it is. We're leaning into those people that want a career in the NHS and commit to bring them on. We've also now got evidence of some of our young people moving on to degree level programmes. So we've got, I think, at least 3 that are now on nurse apprenticeships. So they came in on our programme, they got a job, a substantive job. They've done top-up training to enable them to have all the credits they need to step into a nursing apprenticeship. So we're seeing them go through the ranks now. That's really exciting. And one's recently got accepted onto a podiatry degree programme. So again, just brilliant progress.
Yeah.
And it's all about growing our own and seeing and evidencing that you can show the transition and you're not losing them, I think.
And the career pathways as well are quite visible, that sounds good. That's great. Brilliant, we've got some other hands. Ian from Cumberland, how are you?
Yeah. Do you apply the same for the people who are not 16 to 18? So you said you were widening things, and do you apply the values-based recruitment? Because I wondered how that changes for the people who are over 18.
Yeah, it doesn't. So the program is about appointing into entry-level posts, and we're looking for people who meet the core values. We were still believing, whilst we still sit with young people, even if they are 18 to 25, we still feel that they're in a position where, you know, they come into the NHS because they see that that's their career choice and they want to be supported in. So we don't go to appointing at that point on an interview process. We stick with our values model because it's working for us to find the right fit for young people we want to develop.
Does that answer your question, Ian?
Yeah, I was just interested because, you know, we've had conversations here, not with NHS necessarily, but for the council as well, about trying to apply values. And I just wondered if there was any nuance between the 16 to 18s and the over 18s. So.
Yeah, I don't think so. They might be a little bit more confident. Some of the way we run that session, so we run it as a full day or half a day, depending how many are there, and we rotate them around different exercises, and my team and our staff observe. So the actual staff who are going to take them are part of it, and we observe whether they're evidencing respect in the way they're behaving, whether they're communicating well, you know, all those basic values that you look for to meet your trust values. That's what we're observing, but we're not doing it through the way they answer a set of questions. We're doing it through what they actually do when they're posed with different challenges.
I'm going to bring Julia in next, but Ian, just a quick question back to your comment in the chat. You said that you've got, you know, very high paid visible jobs in the nuclear sector and contrasted with the low paid jobs. Is it an either or? Can you actually see creating pathways through the supply chain of the nuclear in a similar way to what Nicola's done?
Well, there have been attempts to do that kind of thing, but that was in the past. I don't think there's anything like that running that I'm aware of at the moment. And so it's interesting that it's centered around a particular organization rather than a kind of broad-based supply chain, I guess. But yeah.
And that is what we're trying to do next, Ian, on the island. I'm working with some engineering firm colleagues. I think it will be a little bit different because they're private industry, and therefore, would they want to rotate? Would we want to share the secrets of their provision? It's not quite like that in the NHS, but I'm sure there's ways around it, and that's what we're working through at the minute.
And I guess it might be around the mixture of employers, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just in case you're wondering about time, Rachel, I'm going to probably bring in Apollo about 10 to 11. We've got quite a lot of cushion room in today's agenda. Julie, you've been very patient.
No, not at all, Nick, and thank you. Nicola, thank you for a lovely presentation. I lead all the job centres across Norfolk and Suffolk, and we've got so many synergies. And Ian, you actually took my question, which was DWP really steps in at 18 to 25. We would never not help anybody at 16. We've done a similar programme in our west side, so it's still on the coast, Kings Lynn, but they haven't necessarily focused on young people. The NHS stepped up, and it was just the 2 HR director. I have to say, working with the NHS, we have to find a person like you, Nicola, that's willing to work with us. And unfortunately, we can't spread you, but Rachel and Laura might know more on the other side of the coast, but their programme was like a rolling work experience. So again, you grew your own, you got to know these people, then you help them go through that very complicated NHS process. But my ask is really, if I find an NHS that we could work with, would you help us and support us to unlock some of those, what they perceive as to be in their barriers that they can't remove? And just a final thing, Laura, congratulations on your King's Enterprise Award. That is something very, very special. You mentioned that you can have do you know you can have your own flag post and your own flag? So I should get a flag.
Yeah, we do know that, and you can have it on all your logoed paper and all those things. To be honest, I just felt really proud of the amazing work we've done to help the 60 young people that we've probably created opportunities for that may never have had them before. So yeah. But thank you.
Congratulations. It's really hard to get. Well done.
Thanks for that, Julia. And just I think a couple of points. That there's that missing middle which we keep on coming across. At the moment, the way things are designed, we don't actually put enough emphasis on the programmatic work which Nicola does, which is not bureaucracy. It's actually really essential person-centric stuff, but we're just pigeonholing it in that right way. So it's very short term. the stuff you're doing, but it needs to be actually mainstreamed, I believe, but at the moment it's new. So I think that's a crucial part. It's particularly important for coastal communities, because in coastal communities, 75% of our 180 coastal towns are less than 50,000 people. So they're enough to have the challenges of economic deprivation, but not enough to have the infrastructure then, the variety of roles. So I think it's a recurrent thing we're coming across in the CNN. Julia, we are working with 3 locations in Norfolk and Suffolk, including Lowestoft at the moment. So I'm sure Jackie and Claire will be able to find a willing NHS anchor organisation for something like that, hopefully. Brilliant. Imelda.
Hi, Nicola, fantastic presentation, and I watched the video before the meeting, and it really is inspiring to see the passion from those young people. So just a few points from me. I have to agree with what Julia has said about getting that right person from the NHS. Anna and I have endeavoured, we've made so many connections. We thought a while back we actually got the right person, but it didn't work out. So I would be grateful as well for the Southeast if we could maybe get some key contacts. This is something I'm really quite passionate about, and I'm doing quite a bit of work across the Southeast. But listening to you talk, I mean, in Southern, we have 2 NEAT Zero pilots. So we actually have one in Portsmouth. And I was wondered if you're connected in with that pilot in Portsmouth. And if not, I think that's something we could potentially explore. I can put you in touch with the right people. Again, obviously, youth is one of our top priorities in DWP. We really have to work with our youth cohort and help them into sustainable employment. And there's lots of support now made available to help us do that. We also have a NEAT pilot in Brighton and Hove, so there's another potential opportunity. The other issue we have across the Southeast is really kind of touching on what Ian has said. We've got lots of competing sectors that pay better, but I think for me, if we can hook in young people and they can see the opportunities, hear from other young people who have connected, who have actually found their career, I think we can energize more and get them to step forward. And I think my final point is, values is such a positive way to screen these people as well, because then you've got that commitment, you're kind of tapping into what makes them tick. And obviously your results say that with the sustainability, which is amazing.
Thanks.
Does that sound something you'll be able to look at, Nicola, in terms of that?
Yeah, happy to support. I probably am linked in. I'm part of a Solent, I can't remember the name of it now, but they've linked me into this Solent group. I should remember the name. That's terrible. Don't tell them I forgot. But it's like a Solent-wide planning group where they're planning in best interest. And there's a lot of like the skills link people linking in there. And they invited me in recently as a rep for health, actually, at the table, but also due to my experience and passion is probably the way they'd describe it, for trying to drive the programme forward with young people across the whole patch. So I'm involved with that, and there have been conversations there about some of the pilots that have happened, but I'll put my details in the chat once we've finished, so you've got them, and then you can do whatever you like with them, Imelda. That's fine. Please feel free to share and contact.
I have reached out to the Southwest contact to see if they're connected in, but that would be brilliant. Thank you.
No problems.
I think it's an important point about enthusiasm, and because there's a piece of work in Thanet in East Kent where they had a lot of job coaches referring people into a WAD program. At the same time, they used actually a digital engagement tool. They really actually used social media in a very, very clever place-based way to target the cohorts. And what they found is that there was more people coming through that social media direction in a shorter space of time. But secondly, people came with a different approach. they sort of were volunteering with it, and what they found was that mixing them in with the other people actually created something better than it would be if it just took the people referred to by the job coaches. So I think there is something about using enthusiasm to spark wider enthusiasm. Ollie.
I think one thing I've learned is that the public sector is appalling at taking a punt on people. So we used to have a really successful swaps program in the NHS in Somerset, and then, as with every other organisation in the NHS, we've had sort of reductions in terms of number of the people we've been recruiting. So we still work with the colleges that deliver that swaps program, and two of the most successful ones have been with a not highways, but like transportation sector organisation and a caterer to schools. And they have taken people on through the swaps, and they've had a particular role that they've advertised. But in the example of the transport sector, the entry-level role, I think, paid 25k, and they spotted something in a couple of people, and they said, okay, I think we could put you straight into being a technician. And straight off, they get a job that pays £42,000. And that is a hook for somebody to come off universal credit, and that is a hook for somebody not to be neat, and that is a hook for somebody to start developing their education as well in a way that perhaps where it's, you know, attached to grades rather than attached to money hasn't motivated that person as a young person. And whether that's pay structures, whether that's the reduction in recruitment, that's just not something that happens in the health and care sector. And it's much more likely that you've got your foot in the door now, and then you can do your level 3, and then you can do your level 5, and then maybe eventually one day perhaps you'll be a nurse or whatever it might be. And I just think we work at such a slow pace compared to the private sector in terms of taking a punt on people. So I don't know, Nick, like, do you work with the private sector as well on the Isle of Wight? Do you go actually, do you notice that as well, or is Somerset particularly bad?
No, I don't think it's Somerset. I don't think we do. And I think what you describe is exactly what was happening here. We didn't take those punts on people. What I think has made a difference. So we only bring them in on a 2-year fixed term project. I got my first job as a YTS, those old people amongst us that can remember YTS schemes. And I wanted to reinvent a YTS type scheme that didn't mean someone had got a job. You still have to earn a job, and you still have to work hard to get a job, but actually you've got to give someone a bit of a leg up to get something different. So that's why we created it as a 2-year fixed term programme. Our trust wasn't even allowing apprenticeships unless you'd got a substantive vacancy that you could put the apprentice in. So I completely challenged that got taken out for this programme, and we hold people for 2 years because the last 3 months is about supporting them into a substantive role, actively supporting them in. We've even changed the criteria in our recruitment pathways now. So if someone's on an apprenticeship, you have to interview them first before you even go out to advert externally. So we're absolutely trying to recognise that things need to happen. If we don't, I've invested thousands of pounds in these young people, and then we're going to let them walk away. So that's some of the changes that we've had to make to policy. Paying them does make a difference. They earn a bursary, and that has been difficult. The first 6 months while they're only getting the bursary, which essentially we pay them £10 a day for turning up. So if they come, they get £10 a day. It's a bursary fee, which doesn't affect any of the family credit. If they then attend enough, that is probably the only criteria to put them on the apprenticeship. If they've attended and are ready to go into the apprenticeship, they go directly into a level 2 vacancy, late level 2 salary, which is just over 20k. For some of these young people, you know, they're gobsmacked when I hand out the contract at the celebration event that, you know, you've done really well in the first 6 months, here's your contract for 18 months at 20 grand a year, you know. So and actually in the world of the NHS, that's not a massive amount of money compared to what we pay a lot of our staff. So we're paying them a trainee support role, essentially payment, to get them in to be an extra set of hands in services, which is how it operates. So I think we do use 2 different things to motivate. It is the giving you an opportunity, even though it's not substantive, but we do pay them a decent salary because, you know, their family will lose their credit and all that stuff. And with the people being so young, we think that's really important.
I think Ollie, the point is about does it seem very slow, or do we just not selling in the incentives? Or does it feel like a Scientology 100 steps to, you know, getting there sort of
Yeah,
approaching
yeah, that's right. It's 100 steps to getting there, sort of thing.
I think a lot of it's tied into the fact that everything you want to invest in has to have an in-year ROI. So from an ops perspective, unless I can prove the benefit of what I'm going to invest in and it's going to pay me back the amount I've invested in the next 12 months, then I can't do it because there's no spare money. And I think that's some of the challenge that we face in the NHS. I think this year they're trying to amend the planning round to be a bit more longer term, but I think while the pressure's so great, that is the big challenge. And you'll never turn around an ROI in year on these kind of programs. 3 years on, we're starting to reap the benefit of having hardly any entry-level vacancies. As soon as an entry-level vacancy is opened, we can fill it. We have a pipeline that we never once had. That's the benefit, but you've got to be in for the long haul.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring Rachel in because they've got a fantastic complementary case study on the East Coast. But just something to think about coming into the next discussion in 10 or 15 minutes time. Sustainability is key. We've got a lot of investment going into skills, workforce things through things like connected work, which are multi-year packages. Just thinking about opportunities to actually use some of that and combine it at a place level, and think about could be actually great stepping stones to sustainability by not just focusing on NHS budgets, but place-based budgets. And also, there's a lot of investment, I think, duplicated and often wasted in terms of social value from the private sector, which I think could be channeled in a different way. So I think, the reality is everyone's sort of a bit short of cash at the moment, but we've all got some, and combining it at a place level seems to be, at least the new normal. But enough from me, and over to Rachel. So I'll just bring up the slides again.
Yeah, so morning everybody, and thanks for that great presentation from the Isle of Wight. There's definitely some overlap and consistency that you'll see with the Apollo project in terms of barriers and opportunities. I've also got Laura, who's our great project lead, on the call, so we're going to be doing a bit of a double act, Nick, if that's all right. So give you a bit of context, Apollo was launched as a concept around 3 years ago, where the NHS in region highlighted their ongoing struggles with recruitment and retention, and wanted to explore how FE colleges in the region could potentially be the creation of a talent pipeline, because there was a lot of missed opportunities where students were studying health and social care, maybe didn't go into relevant jobs at the time or may have done it later, but also actually there was a wealth of talent pipeline within our community, within adults looking to retrain or people that were currently on some form of benefit. So we came up with a lot of innovation and creativity and a lot of backwards and forwards with the NHS. And we came up with a range of interventions, which ranged from inspiring in the community and schools, doing additional wraparound for students on care courses, adult retrainers, internships, and also looking at that retraining piece, and actually the unemployment piece of it can't just be a college course that they need to study. It's what about that wraparound? So we came up with Apollo, and Apollo has been phenomenal. As you can see on that slide, we've engaged with over 21,000 people in the community and schools. We've engaged with over 2,000 people in some form of work experience, which we know that volunteering piece is really, really critical of not only the employer seeing a person try before you buy, but also that young person or adult actually getting to explore the breadth of health and social care opportunities. Because one of the things that was a real barrier was actually, I don't want to do personal care. And we know there's a lot more opportunity within health and social care than just personal care. But a key part of the achievement so far is actually the employers to date. Without employers in partnership, Apollo doesn't work. And you can see we've now got over 700 people in supported employment, and that is growing on a daily basis. Thanks, Nick. So lessons learned, I could probably talk for about 6 hours on lessons learned. The beauty of Apollo is our board and the NHS have allowed us to be creative and flexible in the year of the project. So we know some projects are really stipulating against strong KPIs, You can't change kind of the direction, you can't change the project, but actually Apollo, because of its flexible approach, we've been able to adapt throughout the 2 years. So just some key points: individual uniqueness. Obviously in health and social care, we celebrate person-centred approaches, and that's been critical also with everybody we engage with Apollo. As a college, it's very, very easy to go, we've got somebody, we're supporting them with advice and guidance, we enrol them on a college course, we teach them, we support them, we get them the qualification, and then it kind of fizzles out. But with Apollo, we've been able to really target each individual starting point and really get the concept that everybody's on their own journey. Somebody might start and be very proactive and passionate and come in with quite a good level of academic and work experience. But compared to someone that may be unemployed for maybe 18 months, got low social confidence, history of family unemployment, they need a different approach. So Apollo has been able to give that wraparound approach of a job coach, a trainer, to absolutely nail down you're on an individual journey, and we're going to help you on that way in whatever way we can. The preconceptions bit I've already kind of touched on, that when you speak to people around health and social care jobs, they automatically go, I can't do personal care, or the NHS is extremely stretched, why would I go into a stressful job? And I'm not saying that we've cracked this nut, but we have done a lot of work through the Inspire piece around the breadth of jobs. People forget around social care. It's not just health, it is social care as well, and that will become more and more apparent as we move through the workforce changes within the NHS and community hubs. But it's really breaking down that preconception of all of the amazing jobs that you could do. And that is, we're not going to crack that nut totally, but we can do that on that individual level and really get to unpick, well, is it because of a perception that maybe you've had a family member that worked in health and social care and they didn't like it? Or is it how we portray jobs and how we do careers advice? So that whole demystification piece has to be ongoing at a group, a community and an individual level. That transactional approach is a really key learning point from Apollo as well, that actually it isn't just about someone's gained some qualifications and they can now apply for a job. But probably a biggest piece is actually getting the employer to understand that if you put a job vacancy out and you get applicants and you have a very rigid interview process, you've already potentially lost amazing people because of your interview process. So not everybody is confident at doing about a very detailed online application. Someone who is neurodiverse will not cope in certain formal interview processes face to face. So part of Apollo isn't just about the recruitment, it's working with employers about the recruitment and the retention themselves. Because very often an employer will have a set job description, a set amount of hours. But you may lose somebody that needs some flexible working because they're a young parent or they're an informal carer where they need certain hours. So that's been a really, really good learning curve and feedback from employers about getting them to understand about our phrase of do different. Not do the same, it's do different. The innovation piece as well has been great. So we allocated a budget against our Inspire where we could do things differently. So we've brought in VR programs where we've created a day in the life of, or following someone who is living independently, has had a fall, but actually you follow the person through their care and their rehabilitation so you can understand the job roles. So we can take that out to the community, we can use that in classes, and actually it's engaging people in a different way. So I'm just going to pass you over to the next bit to my fantastic colleague Laura, who can keep going with her side of the lessons learned.
So hello everyone. So we've done a lot of holistic support. So we've made sure that our job coaches are the right people in the right jobs to be able to support those people. And it's also not just a one-off, it's a continuation of that. we've done lots of work around employers' involvements. We've held employer breakfasts and which have been so successful, and the actual employers really benefit from it and have really enjoyed it. And sometimes it's hard to actually get them to leave to go back to work because they're just enjoying the conversation so much with each other. So they've been able to network and help each other as well. We've done lots around Inspire. We've done road shows around the 2 counties, really promoting working in health and social care, and lots of campaigns on social media and what have you. We've done lots of collaboration with our NHS. We've got a really good relationship now with our hospital, which has taken a long time to build up. And obviously with the DWP as well, we've got some excellent relationships, and we're in the DWP centre, job centres every week with our job coaches meeting people. Funding needs, that's a bit more Rachel's bag than mine. So I don't know, Rachel, if you want to pick up on that one.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of the world we're living in. We're already touching on actually how do we keep achieving this. The funding part is, it was great that we could get some funding off at the NHS to do the 2-year project. There was some legacy funding, so we are continuing into year 3. How we've been able to do that at the moment is using our college adult skills fund, which provides the funding for the training towards the care certificate, but also our short courses that we provide additionality, for example, end of life, dementia and autism. Now that's great, but we don't know year on year how much allocation we're going to get. There's always a little bit of a disconnect of, if there's a need for adult skills and training, there also is the need for the right qualifications to be funded by the Department of Education. And there is always kind of a little bit of disconnect between government policy about what is funded, what isn't funded, and what is the need. And, you know, Julia on the call will know this conversation very well about that connectivity at policy level as well. So we will continue to be able to fund the training. However, next year, it's how do we go out and source that job coach and that wraparound piece that is kind of the unfundable for a college provider. So that's just something that kind of, we want longevity and we want legacy, but external factors will always kind of give us some challenges to look at.
Okay, I think we can go to the next slide now. So Rachel, I think you need to pick up on this one.
Yeah, that's fine. So barriers and limitations is quite a harsh title, but it's kind of those lessons learned of what stops us with the pace, what stops us with the innovation. We know the pressures within NHS trusts at the moment, and unfortunately we know exactly the barriers of, it's the person within a trust or within a department or within an organisation that makes something happen. And that personal level where there's been changes, some people have left, moved into different job roles or secondments, that is a real block. So one of the examples we had was, we got quite a lot down the road with Laura and the team around NHS Trust and helping them with volunteering. Because unfortunately, because of the pressures the trust were facing, if someone applied to be a volunteer, it was up to 18 weeks before their application could be looked at. And we know that volunteering is great for work experience for the individual. It's great for the organisation because it's an extra pair of hands, but also those people then could potentially be applying for job roles. So we know there's a lot of flux and pressure at the moment, but it is that kind of need. You need a person who has passion, who has the ability to drive change within an organisation to then help you with your ideas and projects. Recruitment freezes are a problem. We've got local trusts that have had to rely on agency. So therefore your HCAs, your entry-level job roles are necessarily kind of blocked, or they're just 0 hours ad hoc, and that's not what people need. Levels of English and maths, where we've had people with low confidence with English and maths especially with the English. We've been able to use our college funding to support with functional skills or English units. But again, that comes back to they're not even having the confidence to fill out an application form. So it's removing those barriers early. Work readiness. If someone has been out of employment for quite a while, they lack confidence, which is again where the volunteer and work experience has been an amazing stepping stone, kind of that swap model that we've already talked about. I've already touched on the flexibility of the recruitment process, and that is ongoing, about trying to work with HR teams about don't do what you've always done, think differently, because you have missed amazing people because of blockers that you've put up with your process. Social care pressures, facing phenomenal pressures within social care, and that's only going to increase. But linked to that is also the international recruitment piece and the change in the care visas that we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years. Within coastal communities, there's a real high reliance at the moment on people with care visas. There is going to be that shift about recruit local, attract local, but there is a real worry within our area that actually there's a disconnect with the timelines. And I think that's going to put even more pressure on social care when they can no longer have that kind of transition between international recruits and local. And I've already touched on the myths of the sector, which is kind of an ongoing battle, but we all see it and we can all do something about it, just chipping away. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you very much, both. That was terrific and very complimentary, and appreciate the extra focus on employers. I think that's a real key point for Coastal Navigators Network to consider at a national level about the that national potential priority around care sector staff on the coast and the perfect storm which we're potentially creating there. So, you know, the ambition is to recruit more locally, but it's not happening at the moment. So what's going to make the difference? So I think that's a really important point. What would you say, because you work with beyond just the NHS in terms of the care sector, and I think you work quite a lot with the energy sector as well, Rachel, what would you say is the key principles of getting a employer to go from, oh, I'm going to sign a pledge, I'm going to go to an event to say how committed we are to this, to actually opening up vacancies? What do you think are the really hard, but you know, what would you start with? Yeah.
I mean, I would probably say at the moment, obviously, we've got Sizewell C, brand new nuclear power plant being built in region. Yeah. And I have various emails and phone calls every week by somebody saying it's really important for our social values to be involved with the college and to help the region. We're now putting in a tender, and if successful, can we name you in it? And then you hear nothing.
Yeah.
So there is this real piece of playing smart, that you know the person and you keep going back to them. What we've had kind of success in the past is the opposite of name and shame, but do a bit of a LinkedIn post going, we've had a great meeting today with X and talked about their commitment to Y. Yeah. So you put it out in the public domain, because then they are more likely to go, oh, okay, we have got to do something about this. We really push on the social values piece.
Yeah.
About it's mutual and it's not just about ticking a box. Yeah. I mean, all of our college projects around employability since 2017 have generated 38 million of Tom's social value. So it's giving them the idea that we can be their solution, that they haven't got to come up with something new. They just need to embrace what works, and we can be a partnership in doing it, rather than them trying to do something standalone with a blank sheet of paper that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or is going to take very long to get going. And it's selling it, we have a solution for you. And I think that's the key thing.
Yeah. Well, just that example you gave, are you saying that's for a supply to Sizewell wants to put you in a bid to get money?
Yeah.
Get contract Sizewell. Okay. So it's a supply chain.
It's the supply chain, but it's also the tier one contractors who are mutually obliged to be doing. And what they have got, you know, they've got great ideas and they're doing a lot around social value, but we need to get them to harness. Do you want big impact? Here is your solution.
Yeah. So we've got 3 nuclear sites sort of nuclear locations on our call today with Whitehaven and Hinckley as well. It's really interesting to find, consider about what we think about the supply chain as well. And but Ollie, but you're going to come in on a separate point.
Yeah, I was going to come on a similar point, and Hattie, please do come in because you know probably more about this than I do. So one of the observations that I have from our work with parish councils, rural and coastal communities around the Hinckley Sea site is the community funding has been quite effective at getting capital builds. So some wonderful new facilities in terms of village halls and those sorts of things. But in terms of it ticking the social value box, a really good example would be something which we have a need for in Somerset is with food banks. Used to be there was loads of retail overstocks, lots of amazing work being done on net zero, and now what we're seeing is there's more industrial overstocks but less retail overstocks. What we need are local kitchens that allow food banks to repackage those industrial overstocks into meals for families, and that sort of thing is a useful capital thing. Having a new village hall is a nice thing, but it's not necessarily going to match up with where our health inequalities are. So that's the first thing I'd say. And the second thing I'd say is if we've got these wonderful facilities, whatever they are, but we don't have the revenue funding, whether that comes from the private sector, from the voluntary sector, from the NHS, from local government, whatever it would be, to be able to deliver those sorts of services. So youth work in rural and coastal areas, like top of the list really. That I definitely think there's a challenge there, that it's much easier for them to say we've ticked our social value box if you can take a photo for building, is my impression. I don't know, Hattie, if you wanted to add anything on that from your perspective.
Sorry, I'm having absolute nightmare with Teams today. I realise my camera hasn't been on either. Sorry, I'm a bit late to the conversation and I'm trying to kind of like match it all up. But Ollie, the one thing I think I can add to what you've said, that in Somerset we are actually at the council economic prosperity team. We're producing a value guide. So any of the new development, I don't know if this is relevant to the conversation, but any developments that come on stream, particularly of a certain size, some of them in some of the county, when we districts, we have local agreement obligations, but it's only a certain size. Program there's kind of very unitary and stuff. So we are creating a social value toolkit. So anything that comes out of big developments are things that are needed, not just for plants and trees. Something that we think is nice. So kind of stuff that you're talking about, Ollie, would be really interesting to feed into that. So when a developer's looking for something to give back social value wise, then that would be something that's needed. Is that the kind of
social value toolkit is that's exactly what I was expecting you to add.
Yeah, good, perfect.
Lots of opportunities. It's just finding the right person for the connection to start the conversation, to get something done differently rather than the norm.
We're doing a piece of work on social value for one of our locations, and try to avoid anyone guessing who it is, but they've set up a thing called a social marketplace, social value marketplace, and the feedback from the sort of the CPOs on the ground, the people who engage in the community, is that it's every time we want to look for something, we go on this thing and it's useless. There's nothing there which you can conceivably think would be of value for our local community. But the principle there is right. But I just don't. I think they need far clearer direction where social value would actually link up something which. I mean, a lot of it is about supporting existing assets rather than creating
exactly
assets. I think that's a key principle. But Louise, from covering a lot of other locations, but particularly Felixstowe, and you're doing some great work with football at the moment, aren't you?
Thanks, Nick. Yes, so my name's Louise Hardwick and I'm Deputy Director of Partnerships for Suffolk and North East Essex ICB, soon to be Norfolk and Suffolk. I just, Rachel, just wanted to pick that point up about Sizewell C. I think they're obviously doing some absolutely amazing work with their skills hub in Leiston, and they are going to be extending those hubs to other areas. But actually, from a anchor institution and that social value is how can we evolve that more into I think the skills hubs are a great starting point, I suppose, but the question is, how do we bring those local anchor institutions into that picture so young people can really get that access to job opportunities,
Yeah.
and the project delivers genuine social value for that, and that sustainability, like in scalability. And that's probably something maybe I'd like to discuss with you outside this meeting to see what or if anything I could do to help support that. And I know, Julia, you and I have picked this up in our previous conversation not so long ago, is how do we knit that all together from a local perspective, and I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, and I think what we've learned from Apollo can easily be transferred across to different sectors. So we are working with Sizewell around the Pontins project, which is large accommodation, swaps, internships. So Apollo has given us the footprint of 3 years of learning. We don't want to stop it for health and social care, but actually, how can it evolve out as well?
I absolutely agree with you, and I know there's some challenges with that as well, isn't it? Because that gives those young people opportunities to stay there, but obviously the funding and how much and everything else, I understand that as well. So it'd be good to have a catch up.
Yeah, no, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I suppose we need to really think about a place-based approach, but to allow that funding. I mean, what we're picking up from this is that there's a category of tactics which are clearly working, and some new ones today about creating these networks of young people to make them sort of self-supporting, and lots of really good innovation which are at risk of getting lost if we don't get the strategy right around sustainability, having those linked people, whatever we end up calling those program teams, and that very, very person-centric approach. I think the opportunity is to stop people working in silos, as we all say, at breaking barriers and getting them to really start thinking place first. I'm going to bring in Julia and then Ian. Julia.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I don't want to hog the sort of Sizewell C conversation, but while I've got Louise and the lovely Rachel here, I did mention Julia Pike, who was MD at Sizewell. She's now got this new role, and I couldn't remember it the other day when I spoke to you, but it's the Clean Energy Commission. So she's part, and she's telling me on a WhatsApp that how it's got good ministerial. So Nick, I'm with you. So if we can join it all up, then that's the trick. And if she's happy, and she's so wedded to making a difference to the community, because she's actually cross with Sizewell C that they haven't done it, which is a good thing for us. So let's get on those coattails and see if we can do something together.
Is that national, Julia?
It is. Yeah. It is national.
Yeah. So I mean, Whitehaven, they've got a huge vision and project with Pioneer Park, which is to ensure about the clean energy sector, particularly with nuclear energy. I think there's an issue that people just end up thinking about Sellafield, but it's thinking more about how the clean energy sector could be sort of like a training ground for all sorts of other useful sectors. So that's really helpful. Thank you, Julia.
And Louise, thank you for National Grid, because they're in there as well. So they're in my space, so that all that clean energy comes together. Thank you.
That's okay. Another little provider, Nick, that I've got for you.
You've been very busy, haven't you? Just to continue the nuclear conversation, we've now got Ian from Cumbria. Ian.
Well, nuclear, but also the social value bit, I guess, because I mean, obviously last week's presentation was around the Level Centre, which has, as was mentioned, has had some social value funding going into it. But at the other end, I am aware that for some of the people in the supply chain, social value might mean, in fact, does mean, their junior project managers going into schools to run reading sessions, which is kind of not really the idea, is it? But I'm interested in what Rachel's saying, because is there something in saying, okay, let's look at the needs of the area, the social needs of the area, and who can help sort some of that, rather than, because this is a conversation that's going on for us at the council at the moment as well, about the social value aspect of contracts that we issue, and whether or not those help to deliver the council's fundamental sort of core mission of the health and well-being at the heart of everything. Like, how do you put these things together? So I suppose there's something about, it feels like there's something about people not kind of going, well, we'll do that little bit there and that satisfies everything, but saying, okay, let's look a bit more globally at the needs of the area. And I don't know how that then pings into any kind of national impetus to do that, because as far as I'm aware, it's kind of down to the individual contracts at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the problem, Ian. You don't want to go down a box ticking exercise where I've done something for social value, but there's been no impact.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about the, you know, sorry if anybody's involved in them, but the reading sessions.
Yeah.
I'm going to, unless I'm going to see any more yellow hands there, I'm just going to finish off with the potential next steps. But I'll look out while I'm talking if any other final yellow hands come up on the call. But been a brilliant session. Thank you very much. And it really it's evolved slightly from last week's session. For those who've been lucky enough to come to both, I think we can see basically the linkages between social value and today's session. I think I've got some final slides just take you through, but they're mercifully short, just really about showcase back the next steps. But I think tactically, I think we would like to consider at CNN is that there's a really useful overlap between Somerset, the East Coast, and potentially Whitehaven in terms of looking at not identical things, but there's a bit of a cross mergence between what you're doing at the moment. But also, I don't want to leave the other locations out, in terms of just the broad things which to learn from Nicola about engaging young people. I think there's some really, really excellent things which can be transferred across the country, and we don't have to define it in a specific way. So I think there's been really, really useful discussion. I'm going to share what happens next. There's three sort of things we're doing with these workshops. Firstly, we're capturing them. The video will go out after the call in about a week's time. We'll edit it slightly. We'll send the notes out like last time. But this is feeding into the overall national recommendations. So if it's part of a programme of insights and discussions across the country around this particular theme, and it will go ultimately into the end of year prospectus, which we launched in October. Very, very keen if anyone's got some other suggestions for future workshops at the end of this call. We've got space to sort of factor them in, but we have got quite a busy programme just in case people don't have any further ideas. The next events which we're doing, and everyone will get this after the call, are on widening access on the coast. I was going to mention to Rachel on the call back, there might well be a year 2 of the widening access demonstrators programme launched after March this year, and that might create some additional funding opportunities for East Coast and also for Nicola in terms of sustainability. We're hosting for all 10 widening access sites on the in Swale on the 18th, an event to learn from lessons from that, and people are very, very welcome to join that if they think it would be useful. There's going to be 10 sites across the country, some non-coastal areas as well. So that's our next event. And then just after that, looking at coastal mental health challenges on the coast, which is another coastal amplified issue. It does tie in with employment as well, because there are opportunities to actually create the pathways for mental health and recovery for employment. I've got 2 case studies, one from Fleetwood and one from Thanet around that. And again, anyone affiliated with the network is very, very welcome to join those sessions. And then we've got even more events over in March. So just to sum up, McCall, I learned a lot of stuff today, and I'm on a lot of meetings like this. So this has been really, really fresh insight. Very much hope at some point Hampshire and Isle of Wight may be able to join the network, although we have got Dorset joining soon. So perhaps you are involved with the new ICB mergers in any case. They'd be great to be working with Isle of Wight at some stage on the programme. Is there anything else I need to cover before I draw proceedings to a close? Anything else? Anything from my team? Anything I've missed? No, silence. Thank you ever so much for everyone attending. Real thank you to Nicola and Rachel and Laura, and we'll cover our potential next actions after this in the note. But thank you very much again, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, bye.